My unfaithful wife cheated on me while I was in the army, and now her lousy new boyfriend is treating her badly. So I'm in the army, and back then I was married. My first deployment to Iraq was coming up, and the stress was really getting to both of us. My wife, understandably, started begging me to find a way to stay home, to avoid going at all. You know, the usual things any wife would worry about. We didn't have any kids yet, though we both wanted them, so we talked about getting out of debt while I was gone to make a better life when I got back. She decided to move back to her home state and stay with her best friend, who agreed to charge her just $300 in rent. This way, we could save more money and be ready to start our family once I returned. I was actually pretty happy with this plan. It seemed like a good way to get ahead. As I was leaving, she stood there, tears pouring down her face, saying how much she'd miss me and how deeply she loved me. We made this heartfelt promise to start our family the moment I got back. 2 months into my deployment, things started to change. She became distant, barely talking on our scheduled calls, and when she did, it was short, like 1 or 2 word answers. We'd been together for 6 years by then, and she was never short on words before. Out of the blue, she hit me with the news that she needed some space. Can you believe that? Space from someone who's already 1,000 miles away. When I asked what she meant, she just said she needed to find herself. My mind immediately flashed back to this guy back home. He was always hanging around, a bit too familiar, and frankly, a bit inappropriate. I wasn't usually the jealous type, and I trusted her, but suddenly I started noticing that he was in every group photo she posted. Everyone else in the pictures rotated, but not him. For the first time ever, I felt this sharp sting of jealousy and unease that was completely foreign to me. It pushed me to a place I never thought I'd go. I ended up cloning her phone, something I never imagined I'd do. Now, every text she sent and received, I got too. I'll never forget the first message I saw after doing that. "Hey babe, I'll see you after work. Want me to save you some of my leftovers?" That text from her to him hit me like a truck. It completely shattered me. I lost 35 pounds in a week. I couldn't eat or sleep. I was glued to that phone, watching every single conversation, seeing them talk about trying to have a baby together. It was everything a married person fears. I confronted her, asking if she was seeing someone, and she denied it, telling me she was just taking care of herself and that she loved me. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't tell her I'd been getting her texts for 2 months. Finally, she confessed to cheating, saying he was better than me in bed, treated her right, and did everything she wanted. During that time, she used the money I was earning to pay off our debts, get matching I love you tattoos with him, go to shows, buy clothes, the whole 9 yards. And that's when I decided it was time for some payback. I froze our bank account for a month and changed every password to something she'd never guess, using army slang terms, of course. I blocked her on Facebook and my phone, cutting off any way for her to contact me. Eventually, she lost her car to repossession, got kicked out of her place, and had to sell her prized shoes and purses just to survive. Eventually, I found out she had gotten a job back at her old restaurant. So I decided to go nuclear. I posted every single text conversation between her and the guy talking about having babies with timestamps. I matched those with our own conversations and let all our friends see exactly what she'd been up to. Then, I got a few friends to start calling her workplace, constantly complaining about her and the guy. It didn't stop there. I even had friends dine and dash at the restaurant. In the end, they both got fired. In retaliation, she tried calling my command, claiming I'd abandoned her and that she couldn't support herself. But my commander? He was fully aware of the situation and did nothing. He'd been through something similar himself. Then, about a month before I was set to return, she called me from a different number, sobbing and telling me she was pregnant with his kid. Mind you, I was still deployed, so a divorce wasn't even possible yet. She ended up moving 10 hours away with him. On April 24, 2018, she called me again, 5 months pregnant, crying uncontrollably and asking where she should go. Apparently, they had a massive fight and she was planning to leave him. All I said was, "Sorry, not my problem anymore." Fast forward to January this year, and she calls me again, this time from a mutual friend's phone. Her: "He hit me. I don't know what to do." Me: "Well, maybe you shouldn't have cheated on your husband while he was deployed for some guy who talked a big game." Her: So, I guess you're happy about this? Me. No, but at least I know now that I'm not the bad guy in this story. Then, the very next month, she calls again. Her. He's cheating on me with 2 other girls. I'm so sorry, I ruined everything. Me. Yeah, you did. This woman tore my life apart, plunging me into a deep depression I'm still grappling with, but strangely enough, having the proof that I wasn't the problem makes it a little easier to bear. Looking back, if this had happened even 10 or 5 years ago, I would have come home to an empty bank account, an empty house, and a pregnant wife carrying another man's baby. Unbelievably, she reached out yesterday asking if I could help her with rent. Edit. To clear up a few things, I should mention that we got divorced before the kid was born, so I have no financial obligations to her, and it's been nearly a year since. I used T-Mobile's Digits service to clone her phone. Google it if you're curious, I don't feel like explaining it in detail. And no, I wasn't celebrating the fact that she got physically abused. I did tell her to call the cops, but that's where my responsibility ends. It's wrong to hurt someone, but I'm not responsible for her well-being anymore. Now on to the next story. My wife had an affair with our dog sitter. My wife, 35, lost her sister in December of 2019. Her sister had been pretty sick for a long time, but no one really expected her to die so suddenly. She was 8 months pregnant with our daughter at the time. They had just bought a new house and her folks were moving to our area since we needed help with the kids. Then, in March, COVID hit. Therefore, because of all this, my wife never really got the chance to be able to properly grieve for her sister's release. Looking back, I realized the biggest mistake I made was not recognizing how deep the tension was between my wife and her sister. They never had a good relationship. They were always at odds, and whenever my wife talked about her, it was usually something that had annoyed her. Things did start to improve a bit after our first child was born in 2018. But their relationship never really reached a point where you could call it good. So, when her sister passed, it hit my wife and her family really hard. I tried to be supportive and did everything I could when it first happened. As time passed, my wife rarely mentioned her sister except around her birthday or the anniversary of her death. During those times, I would be there for her, but throughout the year, I didn't bring up her sister or check in on how my wife was dealing with it. This was a huge mistake on my part. Because they hadn't been close, I assumed she wasn't struggling as much as she actually was. This past December, my side of the family planned our Christmas gathering on the anniversary of her sister's death. My wife told me that it was a tough day for her and I passed that along to my family. But they decided that day worked best for everyone, and I didn't push back, which I now deeply regret, knowing what I do. Well, after that day, my wife kept pulling away from me. We had fabulous sex chemistry and were an average 4 or 5 times a week couple, but that came to utter halt. When I inquired as to what was happening, she stated that her sister had died, and she just wasn't really into the whole sex thing. I got it, and I did not press the matter anymore. It was not just the sex that dried up. We were one of those super physical couples who hugged/kissed/held hands/cuddled on the couch all the time. We even spooned and passed out together every night. But that all ended in the next week or 2. She no longer wore her wedding ring, which was a major red flag for me, and she stopped responding "I love you too" when I said it first. She became extremely distant. Every time I attempted to start a serious conversation regarding the glaring connection that loomed ominously between us, she would deny and tell me it was her means of coping with old issues over not being able to forgive or have closure for what had happened in hell with Celeste Castle. She promised that it had nothing to do with our relationship, she just needed time off her own emotional roller coaster. I did my best to support her, but she would not open up about it, nor tell me what was going on with her sister. I pleaded with her to speak, but she simply said that she did not want to. That was how January went. By February, it was practically as though we were simply housemates who co-parented. We never really spoke, and when we did, it was just awkward, shallow small talk. At mealtimes, I would inquire after her day, work or axe-throwing hobby, and only receive one-word answers. I would try to sit her down and talk seriously with her, maybe once a week. I knew she was still grieving her sister, but it quickly became apparent that this wasn't about the ongoing grief process. This is a deeper issue between us. Each time we tried to talk and every conversation began with me asking her to let me in, I found myself blaming us for what had happened. During this period, I learned a guy she knew, predating me and we met, that he had popped into her work in the new year. She explained to me that they had a conversation, and he noticed she was sad and struggling. She racked with sobs and spilled to him all that had been going on. The truth is, however much I wanted to be that person for her, and she later told me it was easier somehow with him, actually, this guy, we'll call him John, started helping out with a new puppy my wife brought home from work. The puppy was maniacal. We were never home because of both our schedules, and even when we were, she destroyed everything. He offered to dog sit, and between him and us, the pup was pretty well taken care of. But this arrangement meant my wife was seeing John 2 to 3 times a week when she dropped off or picked up the dog. She started staying out late and was barely around the house anymore. When I asked her about it, she would just say she needed space. I should also mention that at the end of January and the beginning of February, she started sleeping in our spare bedroom, saying she just needed more space. At this point, every alarm in my body was going off about John and the whole situation. Our relationship was really strained and I didn't want to add accusations of cheating into the mix, so I naively chose not to ask or push the issue. More weeks went by like this. Last week, less than 12 months after I inquired with my doctor about the vasectomy referral, they called me to say that I could perform it Friday. My wife had gotten for her birthday a chef in the bush experience, where you hike out into some place in the woods and enjoy on-the-spot cooking by your personal chef of a 5-course menu. I told her that because of the procedure on Friday, I obviously wouldn't be able to go hiking into the woods on Saturday. She immediately asked if she could bring a friend instead of canceling. She said she was going to bring a friend of hers, Jenny, who was going through some things of her own. I said that was fine, although my mind was spiraling, thinking she was actually going to bring John. She went on the excursion and was gone all day, not getting home until around 7 p.m. When she got home, I asked her all about it and she spun quite a tale about everything she and Jenny did and ate and how amazing it all was. She plugged in her phone and went for a shower. I have never been the snooping type, but I felt absolutely compelled to check her phone, and there it was, all of it. She wasn't even trying to hide it in her phone because she knew I never went through it. There were over a month's worth of messages between them, telling each other how in love they were, and all sorts of photos together over the past month. Kissing, cuddling, holding hands. Nothing explicit, but it was enough. My hands started shaking uncontrollably, and my heart was racing. My worst fear had come true. I immediately confronted her when she got out of the shower, and she admitted it. I asked if they had slept together, which she denied, but I obviously think she's lying about that. After the fact, I found out that the guy she said she used to work with was actually an ex-boyfriend, a detail she conveniently left out when she first told me about him. Back when they worked together, he was married and she was single, and they had an affair that ruined his marriage. I should mention he's 10 years older than her. Now he's single and she was married, and they had, or maybe are still having, an affair that ruined her marriage. This all happened just 2 days ago, and I feel so low. I don't want to say the last 10 years of my life were wasted because they gave me my 2 children whom I love more than anything. But for lack of a better term, it feels wasted. Now, the thought of having to start over again is just so shitty. I thought I had it, the perfect life, but it's all gone. The thing that absolutely tears my heart out is knowing that now I'll only get to see half of my small children's childhood. Half the holidays, just half of their lives, and it makes me cry every time I think about it, including right now